Welcome back to AI for Founders. I'm Ryan Estes. You're probably feeling the whiplash right now. Your office lease was signed in 2018 for 10 years and your team is half remote. Your desks cost $15,000 to $40,000 a year, and your people are either lonely at home or resentful about being dragged back to the office. Today, I'm talking with someone who went through the fire on this. Dan Bladen is the founder of Kadence. That is Cadence with the K. The workplace operations platform behind hundreds of companies, Fortune 50s, 10,000 member teams, tens of millions of dollars raised after a brutal pivot from dead-in-the-water hardware to must-have SaaS. In this conversation, you will learn how to turn empty and expensive offices into a real advantage, how to design a hybrid cadence that actually improves mentorship and family life, why sales and engineering need to share the same oxygen sometimes, and what founder-led marketing does for enterprise deals. If you're a founder, operator, head of workplace, real estate leader, or just a sales dog wondering where your team should actually sit, this episode is for you. But before we get into it with Dan from Kadence, if you want more conversations like this where founders talk about hybrid work, AI, office protocols, and actual revenue numbers, get on the newsletter at aiforfounders.co. Every week, I send you the most useful ideas, playbooks, and founder interviews I can find so you can steal what works and skip what does not. Think of it as standing meeting with the smartest founders in your inbox without the calendar overhead. That's the newsletter at aiforfounders.co. And if this episode gives you one idea that makes you money or saves you from a dumb office decision, pay it forward with a 5-star review and a sentence about what you liked. That's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'd appreciate it. And this episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. If you're a founder, your number one job is to create demand, not just ads, not just posts. You need high-trust conversations with the exact people who can buy from you or fund you. That is what podcasts do better than anything. At Kitcaster, my team books founders on top-tier podcasts that already have your buyers listening. We research the right shows, handle all the outreach and scheduling, prep you so you sound like you have been doing this for years, and then you just show up and talk about what you know best. Our clients have used podcast tours to raise rounds, launch categories, close 6- and 7-figure deals, and build personal brands that make every other channel cheaper. If you want an unfair advantage in your market, stop shouting into the void and start showing up in your buyers' ears for 45 minutes at a time. Go to kitcaster.com, apply to work with us, and let's get you booked on the shows that move your revenue. That's kitcaster.com, Kitcaster by MoBurst. There we go. We're rolling. Dan, welcome to the show.
Ryan, nice to meet you. I love the pearl snaps.
Thank you, and I appreciate you asking about it. I'm a big fan of the pearl snap shirt, particularly the rock mount pearl snap shirt. I'll let the readers find out what's up with rock mount. Maybe I'll put a little something in the show notes. But great company, great Denver company. Shout out to them.
I've lived in the US for a while. Up until the last 2 months, I honestly thought Pearl Snap was like a cover band for Pearl Jam. I had no idea. People were talking about Pearl Snaps all the time. I was like, okay. But I've been learning. I've been acclimating, as you guys say.
Amazing. Yeah. So you must have been in Austin when someone was saying to grab your
was.
Pearl. Yeah.
I was DFW actually, but yes, I was down that way. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'll let our Texas audience and neighbors know that the Pearl Snap shirt originated in Denver. Now, Denver and Austin have like a healthy relationship. We're like cousins. So I know how popular the Pearl Snap is in Austin, but I just let them know that like actually it's from Denver. You know?
Okay.
Is there an English equivalent to the Pearl Snap shirt?
No, I mean the Oxford collar would be like the quintessential shirt you'd want to wear as a British man that knows what he's doing. So the Oxford collar would be probably the most. I don't think there is there's obviously, you might have a nice coat with some nice toggles on it at Christmas time.
Sure.
But, I don't think there's a button niche that I know about, or at least maybe I didn't get to that particular level of class and society before I left.
Well, it's an important subject matter because I personally think men's fashion matters. And I think the contributions from, English fashion have largely been in need of perhaps a resurgence,
It's
because
coming back.
if I think about let's talk about the 18th century, that style was pretty impressive. You had those beautiful jackets, well tailored, high collar, but then they
Yeah.
had the big brass buttons to the long tail, and then kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
the short capri pants with the long socks and the shinable shoes.
I got married in tails. I got married in morning dress. So yeah, I know that vibe well. There wasn't around in the 1800s, but yes, yeah, we're probably following the same accounts on Twitter. That's very much bringing back, I guess, what 80s fashion, men's fashion seems like.
Nice. Well, I don't give many compliments on my attire, so I appreciate it. Now, I want to get into this interview, but before we do, I did do a lot of research on you, and I realize you're an avid outdoorsman and a camper with your family. So I wanted to get a sense of who you are. So
Yeah.
are you into glamping? Are you a car camper? Are you a backpacker, or are you one of these minimalist psychos that just brings like a tarp and wanders into the woods barefoot?
Yeah, we got 3 kids, 10 and under. My wife and I went traveling around the world for 6 months with backpacks back in 2012. We went from South America up through Central America, around Australia, New Zealand, up through Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, then through into India, which was pretty minimal. We put our life in storage for 6 months and did that. But no, with kids, it's in California. I mean, it's hardly called camping in California. It makes it very easy for you. You rock up with a tent from Walmart. Everything's good for you. There's benches, there's sunshine, there is some nice weather. They almost hand out the s'mores, right? So no, it's very easy, very minimal. Yeah, we'd love to go to Tahoe. There's some great beaches around where we live in the Bay Area that we can head out to, and obviously the redwoods and stuff as well. So yeah, no glamping. Definitely like Walmart, family, REI sponsored camping. Nothing too crazy.
But comfortable. I love car camping for that reason with young kids. It's all about the proper snacks. You got the right snacks, you're going to have a great camping trip.
Amen.
Amazing. Now, the trip you took, you said 6 months you guys were backpacking across the world. That's incredible. That was before your children were born?
Yeah, we went traveling about 18 months before we had our first child. I was 25 when we had our first kid. So yeah, we got married at 18 months together, and then we both, left our jobs and went off, which was fun.
Amazing. I love it. I'm going to come back to that. But first, I want to get into your company, Kadence. And I'm really interested. It's cadence with a K.co. And I'm really interested because I feel like I have something to learn here about workplace operations. And you happen to have the #1 best in the world workplace operations platform. So give us a quick introduction to exactly kind of what Kadence does and who they do it for.
Yeah, so as you probably heard over the last 5 years, the way the world works has changed forever. Companies, even though they might talk about going back to the office and they might be mandated to go back to the office, or even the US federal government might be telling you need to go back to the office, the data tells a very different picture. And so we help companies optimize their corporate real estate and coordinate their employees. We think that those 2 items, people and places, are the 2 largest cost centers for any company, and that should be optimized. It's crazy, Ryan. Leases for offices are generally 7 to 10 years. And so if you think about it, there's about 55% of all offices out there in the Western world that have yet to come up for renewal since the pandemic. And most of our customers are going from a 1-to-1 person to desk ratio to sometimes a 3-to-1 person to desk ratio. And so there's just so much savings to be made. Some data recently came out that says that, from Cushman and Wakefield, that says that offices pre-pandemic were only ever 65% occupied at peak times. So pre-pandemic, 65% occupied at peak times. Post-pandemic, we're now up to 51% of pre-pandemic peaks. And so there is a glut of real estate, an absolute glut of real estate. And it has huge implications on tax bases, the way people live their lives, pension funds, particularly in Europe, that are very exposed to offices. And so we help companies optimize their real estate and coordinate their people so that they can make the way they work and where they work a competitive advantage.
How do you optimize the real estate? Does that mean actually finding, like, selling, or in cases where they don't have ownership, they're getting out of their lease, they're subleasing?
Yeah.
How do you optimize real estate?
So let's say one of our customers, Fortune 50 customer company, you would have heard of them, and they've gone from 10.1 to 4.7 million square feet, offices in Chicago, London, New York, all over the world. And pre-pandemic, they're like, hey, we've got too much office space. We're going to move to more of an agile way of working. We're not going to be in the office every day. So we don't need to give everybody a desk. And so we're going to reduce our real estate. So they started off on this campaign. And as they went through this change management campaign, they're basically like, hey, we need software to load balance our spaces so that we never oversubscribe and people don't have desks. We need software to coordinate who's going to come in when. So how does the marketing team in Manhattan overlap with the marketing team with the sales team in Manhattan, for example? And so you get the best out of your working week. So think of it as an operating system for how you manage less real estate inside of your company, as well as coordinating your people. And to give you a sense, like up until, I mean, these offices are bloody expensive, right?
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing with high-end law firms, about $15,000 is what you should expect to pay for a desk a year, which is crazy when you think about $15,000 a desk. So that's your leasing costs, your utilities, your insurance, your Diet Coke and cereal bars, right? That's $15,000. I spoke with a tech company here 3 weeks ago. They're at $40,000 a desk a year.
Wow.
And so with Wall Street focusing on how companies are performing as the number one metric right now, and there isn't much, nobody's getting celebrated for having too many people on their cost base right now either. Optimizing your real estate is a huge piece of low-hanging fruit.
You bet. Which is largely going to be talking about downsizing as far as the conversation goes right now,
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the factors that are contributing. One, you have just maybe COVID exposed that, like with Zoom calls, maybe people are more productive. People are probably much more happy in the short term. I think there's also probably some pretty compelling evidence that when people are at their home office too long, it gets weird. They feel lonely. They lack the ability to get better, because a lot of what I think, this I'm anecdotal, I'm just talking off the cuff, going on this my own, is that you can't really mentor somebody through a Zoom call. You know what I mean? Yep. So the generation gap from the Gen Zs that are coming to the workforce, they're sitting in their bedrooms trying to do a job with a SOP and some automation. They're not really going to get better as quickly as if literally why they call it taking someone under their wing, like a bird, where you're like, no, come sit here. This is what you do. You can say so much more.
Yeah.
But you have that. You have the COVID effect where people can and maybe desire to work from home. But then you have, nearshoring or offshoring, where it's like, well, actually, companies can, it makes sense to find talent all across the world. If we're working from Zoom calls, what does it matter if they're in Chicago or if they're in Bangladesh? Let's capitalize and democratize talent across the entire globe. And then there's benefits for people on both sides. And then you have kind of, for the last couple of years, now everyone's trying to create either agentic solutions for employees or literally calling them AI employees. And all these things are kind of contributing to, when people are thinking about optimizing real estate, they're thinking about downsizing real estate.
Yeah, no, you just touched on so many of the reasons why this topic has not been out of the press for 5 years, because it involves people's personal lives, it involves people's health, it involves people's finances, it involves their sense of being a part of a family or a community. And so it touches on so many aspects of what the modern autonomous Western person values. And so that's why it hasn't gone out of the news. A couple of points that you talked about there. So you talked about mentorship and coming under a particular person's wing. So we're seeing time to partner, by which we mean at law firms, associates becoming partners, has grown by about 40% in London. So it's taking longer for people to graduate to partnerships in London because of some of the over or too much remote happening. you and I are both here living, breathing. We're reliant upon a rhythm happening in our hearts right now, and so I'm a big believer. I've got a background in theology that the world is built around rhythms and a cadence, which is kind of where the name comes from. And so we think there is this cadence of in-office heads up time where you have faster time to decision, you onboard quicker, and you get upskilled, as you talked about as well. But also there is this cadence of, hey, I can get my head down right now. I know what I'm working on. I can go and get on with what I'm working on in a way that is more productive. And so we certainly see this kind of, and I'm seeing it a lot on Reddit as well, like the RTO threads on subreddits on Reddit for the last 3 years have been, hey, how dare you make me return? I've changed a little bit more to, I'm driving myself insane being remote all the time. And so, yeah, we do think there is this cadence of how you should work.
Yeah. And it's a mix of both. It's very interesting, largely, we've probably been without an HQ maybe 12 months. Before that, as soon as we could get back to office, we got back to office. And for me in particular, that I can kind of keep tabs on people because, I'm an investor, I'm an operator, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a lot of different things, but at my core, I'm a sales dog. You know what I mean? I know that I want to be banging the phones. I want to be like bringing energy every single day. And that is something I had to learn from other great sales guys. It's like, hey man, I don't care what happened last night. I don't care if your dog died, whatever. We're bringing energy today and we're going to go, And so you kind of need like that exemplar. So my salespeople, they're with me. I'm like, now I need to see you. I need you to feel my energy. I want to feel your energy, and we're going to grow like that because, sad money don't make none. You know what I mean? And so you see that a lot is people get lost at home, and you get them on a Zoom call and they're just like, hey, and you're like, dude, you okay, man? Come on. Bring this energy up, at least fake it. So the cadence. Very interesting. Now, you also said something about you went to school for theology, and that kind of gave you inspiration for cadence. Talk about that a little bit. Now, you and I know startups aren't built in boardrooms. They're built in the wild, during 3 a.m. bug fixes, botched launches, and that one meeting where everything almost fell apart. That's what Code Story is all about. It's a podcast where tech founders break down the make or break moments behind their products, what went wrong, what went right, and what nearly wrecked everything. Hosted by Noah Labhart, Code Story goes past the highlight reel and into the honest stuff. Late pivots, brutal bugs, and somehow coming out alive with a product people actually love. If you're in the build stage, or the scale stage, or the please let this feature work stage, I can relate. This show will speak to your soul. Listen to Code Story at codestory.co or wherever you get your podcast. Just search Code Story. It'll be right at the top. Because great startups aren't born, they're forged, one hard moment at a time. codestory.co. Hey everybody, you know what's crazy? I've been sitting on a gold mine this entire time and I didn't even know it. My Gmail inbox, literally thousands of warm contacts who already know and trust me. But here's the problem every founder faces. How do you turn those relationships into revenue without feeling like a sleazy salesperson? That's exactly why I've been using warmstart.ai. And honestly, it's been a game changer for my business. This AI platform connects your email, analyzes all your existing contacts, and helps you identify who in your network might actually be interested in what you're doing. Then it writes personalized outreach messages that don't sound robotic or pushy. The best part, you review every single message before it goes out. No spray and pray nonsense. This is relationship-based selling done right. My listeners know I only recommend tools I actually use, and Warmstart has literally helped me reconnect with people I'd lost touch with and turn those conversations into real business opportunities. If you're a founder struggling with outreach, check out warmstart.ai and use code AIFF to get $50 off your first month. Trust me, your existing network is worth way more than you think.
Well, and just touching on that point as well about sales teams. So yeah, we've got several hubs around the world, predominantly two main hubs, Belfast, Northern Ireland, which is where we have product and engineering, and then a go-to-market hub predominantly around Salt Lake City and Utah here in the US. Where we are, our SDRs, our BDRs, we encourage to be in the office as much as possible because of that overhearing the encouragement, the energy that comes off of that for the reasons that you mentioned. And we're seeing most of our customers put sales teams in particular together. We've got about 600 customers around the world that represents about 10,000 teams inside of those companies as well. So we are seeing those grouped cadences together. Theology. I mean, I was doing another company before Kadence that we pivoted Kadence into. The background in theology, and my parents, my mum's a pastor, my grandparents are both pastors. I actually worked for a church in London for 5 years from the age of 18, where I did music and tech at this large church in West London. It's always been a part of like, how do we win big, but how do we win really, really well? And I think there's some ancient truths that have been tested by millennia that still hold true today. Seasons, rhythms of life being one of those. And my hope is that we can get and help society create a cadence for this modern way of working where, I'd love to think that we can move the needle on divorce rates lowering. I'd love to think that we can move the needle on kids knowing their parents a little bit more and perhaps not having as much therapy when they're older because of the way mum and dad worked. You asked about where people are spending their time with a cadence. We're seeing people give an hour back to the company a day on average and taking an hour back as well from their commute to their family. So how does that work? So on average, we're seeing about 2 hours worth of commuting that is being either optimized or saved for a particular day. So if you've got an hour into New York and an hour back home out of New York or London or insert metro. I've been up to San Francisco, I live in the Valley, but I've been up to San Francisco 5 times in the last 10 days. That's an hour each way for me. And so people are giving an hour back to their family when they're not commuting, but they're also giving an hour more to work. And what we've found is that so I'd love to think that we could move the needle societally for that as well. But what we're finding is that when you don't put the hard and fast rules around people as well, when you do lead with grace, for the most part, if you have a high trust business, you're actually seeing people take a lot less sick days. So that's coming out in the data. People are not sick as much as they were previously and taking days off. But then also, if you're not saying, hey, you got to be in 4 or 5 days a week, you're seeing people then, once the kids are down, perhaps turning back on, doing a little bit extra and moving the needle forward towards hitting that OKR or that key result. Whereas if there's much more of a, you do this, I do this command in line, then you're seeing people go, well, I'm going to stop because I'm going to stop at 5. You forced me to come in, so I'm going to force you to be within my sort of remit as well.
Yeah. 5 days in a row going and getting off of the office that's rough, man. I get that. Hybrid does seem to be like kind of evolving as the optimal way to work. Now, so.
And the average in the US, the average, just to put that into numbers, the average US employee would take a $13,000 pay cut to not go into the office every day. Which is bonkers, right? Obviously, you have to be of a certain size to salary to make that work. But on average, for a desk worker in the US, it's about $13,000.
How many people were smoking cigarettes just so they could step out of the office for 15 minutes? A lot. So now,
well, and that's playing out in the data too. I mean, it's just fast, like all the knock-on effects, right? We're seeing people, you get fired less if you're in the same metro as your boss. So presenteeism is still a thing. You're getting promoted quicker if you're in the same office as your boss. So there is a whole like gaming of this that could happen too. But really, it's just, I like to think of it a little bit like sports. I'm a Warriors fan, live in the Bay Area. It was very easy to be a Warriors fan, and kudos to you guys over there in Denver for the last few seasons. But everybody knows that the job, if you're a Warriors player, is to give the ball to Steph. Like that is the goal. And if you have companies aligned, they know what the goal is, then we just see a whole lot more like investment in the companies. We've just announced Tracy Hawkins, the global head of real estate and VP Workplace at OpenAI, has just joined our strategic advisory board. She's not asking people to come into the office at OpenAI. Every time I go in, it is packed. People are on a mission. They're building something. They're excited about it. They want to do it with each other. And so I think a lot of it's on leadership as well to try and create that sense of togetherness and common vision.
Percent. I thought the mission of the Warriors was to hard foul in the paint with Draymond.
Draymond's the victim. Draymond's the victim. He's not worth.
Yeah, no, I agree. And largely, I've been entrepreneur for years with, half dozen startups. And so it's always mission driven. And so that's the selling point always so you get that kind of collaboration. Now you have larger, more established enterprise organizations, and, that comes with its own challenges. And oftentimes, maybe a large part of their assets are built up in the ownership of the office spaces that they've got. So making sure that there's butts and seats is actually like important to the value of their company even.
Yep. Yeah. And you see that with JP Morgan's big kind of very newsworthy return to office. The truth is, if you talk to JPM, which I have done multiple times, they don't have enough desks for everybody. If they did have everybody come back into the office every week, it doesn't actually work. And so what people actually have is their lending book or their loan book versus what they're doing in reality can often tell a story too.
Yeah. Part of the reason it's good to have sales guys together is because they're going to be loud and obnoxious, and they're not going to get the side eyes from people. When you're thinking about optimizing workspaces and you got 14 desks per employee, so people are going to have to take turns. What are kind of traditionally like the groups you want to put together? Is it like admin and fulfillment, or is it, sales and marketing need to be together? Well, how do you like to pair people coming in?
Yeah,
the same
it can,
time?
and it can be different every time as well for every company. What we see is we're seeing more hubs created around certain skill sets, right? So obviously in the Bay Area, it's a lot of engineering and product. And then you might actually see, and so I'm talking more offices and hubs than I am necessarily neighborhoods inside of the buildings, which I'll come on to. But Salt Lake City is a fantastic place to put customer success, for example. So we're seeing a lot of that happening, really focusing around particular regions and the niche in that region. Inside of the office, it's what you'd expect. It's HR, finance, legal kind of being together where they've got a little bit more security and privacy. And then it's go-to-market teams being together. What we are seeing as well is there being, leaders wanting to be on the shop floor more and more as well. So, leaders, if you're a B2B SaaS AI founder, you're wanting to be on the floor with your product team, with your engineering team, very much like Zuckerberg is in their open plan kind of spaces as well. So yeah, lots of congregating around different departments. One of the cool things you can do in Kadence is you can create teams. You can follow the cadences of people that matter to you. So Ryan, you might plot your cadence of when you're going to be in Kadence, all syncs with your calendar. And so when you're in town, I get smart suggestions of, hey, Ryan's going to be in today. You might want to make sure that you're in. And so, yeah, we kind of, with AI, we try and map all that out and make sure that we're being as helpful as possible.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you don't have engineering and product together, at least occasionally, they're going to start hating each other real quick. Same with sales and marketing. It's always turns into that Spider-Man meme with the 3 Spider-Man and they're all pointing at each other. Having people in the same meet space so they can just get on as friends is going to be really important. You need like a bond outside of work because obviously work gets stressful.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I think some of the best sales and marketing teams I've had, for example, and from friends at other companies, heat in the kitchen's not a bad thing as well. Like they should be at each other a little bit.
Agreed. I love it. Some things you're telling me, it's kind of sticking with me, like of this being like maybe larger pursuit. Like, okay, we're optimizing workspaces, but like, how does this make people stop quitting smoking cigarettes? Gives people a better relationship with their wife, gives them a better relationship with their husband and their children. I've said it before that like, I will die feeling a successful man, largely the way that we were able to raise our kids. Now, not that they're gone and raised, but they're 16 and 18. I feel like their childhood is gone. I'm gonna start bawling if I talk about it. But largely that's because I was able to create businesses and my wife could stay home with the kids, then we had that kind of relationship and experience where the kids were always close to me and always close to my wife. And like how important that is truly. It's my greatest accomplishment before and after everything else. So I think I agree with you, which is to say that like if you solve this function, especially around families, like the dividends echo through generations, not to be,
It does.
sentimental.
It does, and you are of the ability where I imagine you were fortunate enough for whatever the circumstances might have been, where you were able to create and design some of that. And not everyone's that fortunate. And so if we can help leaders create environments where outcomes matter more than performative inputs, if we can build that sense of trust, yeah, I think generations will be changed, and it's fascinating as well. There's already data supporting. One of our investors is a professor at Stanford called Nick Bloom. He's kind of the global authority on remote and future of work. And there's some data now purporting that if you have work from home, you're much more likely to start repopulating your country as well. And so I think, and it's actually quite staggering. I think it's a third extra baby per family that has working from home in their cadence. So, as we're all thinking in the West and even in the Far East as well about, particularly in the Far East, governments are looking at working from home as part of population regrowth.
Wait, I got a problem with that. I mean, you're not repopulating the earth on company time, are you? Come on, people.
If you get your work done.
Make sure you punch out first, all right?
And you were smoking for something. You're having a smoking break a moment ago. So, I'll leave it there.
Amazing. So you guys have been meteoric growth. It looks like from what I can see, you've raised about, 35 million in 3 rounds. You have giant enterprise customers. And you mentioned the pivot, and it's probably worth mentioning because it was a pretty gosh darn dramatic pivot. You went from hardware to software, completely unrelated categories. So take us back to the when you kind of had this idea, and I'm sure you've told the story a lot, so maybe I'll just bring it up to speed, that you had Chargify was the original company, which is a wireless charging infrastructure. Pandemic sent revenue basically to zero at that point, and then what happened?
Yeah, and it's a cool story. I mean, some of as you know, some of the best companies have come from pivots. Like, we're blessed that one of the co-founders of Slack is an investor, and their business was a pivot from a computer game company, and their previous business that Stuart and Cal founded together was Flickr, if you remember, the photo sharing app that Yahoo acquired, which was again a pivot from a computer game. So some of the best businesses, I think, come out of these moments in the fire and pivots. So 2013, I founded this business called Chargify, which is a wireless charging business. So think of coffee shops, restaurants, hotels having little wireless charging pucks built into tables. We built a network of those all over the place. We particularly focused on offices towards our later years of that business. And so Accenture and Okta and people like that had them in their meeting room tables, but then Accenture had our wireless chargers on their desks, in their hop desks. And they said, hey, when we put our wireless chargers on these desks, like, we want to recognize who it is. We want to recognize that when Ryan puts his phone on wireless charger on desk 39 and floor 52 in Hudson Yards in New York, that it checked him into that hot desk. And we then knew who was on that floor. We knew who was around him. When he puts his phone on a meeting room charger, it'd recognize him and check him into this slot. So that was our business. We were trying to build Cisco network management, but for wireless power. And we had some intellectual property that we like to say, Ryan, from phones to drones. So we had phones, tablets, laptops, electric vehicles. It's really cool. The new cyber taxi charges wirelessly. You pull it up over a wireless charging pad and the whole thing charges. And then many of the new drones, you don't plug them in, you land them on chargers and they charge wirelessly. So we wanted to be network infrastructure for that. Fast forward to 2020, I just moved my wife and 3 kids under 5 out to the Bay Area. I was out here a week, a month or so for 4 years, 3 or 4 years prior to that. We had HPE, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and Intel were big investors at the time. 4 months after moving here, lockdown happens, and our public infrastructure business isn't really doing anything anymore because no one's in public, let alone needing public infrastructure. And so, Ryan, we had customers. I remember one hotel in Manhattan. They said, hey, we don't know if we're going to be in business anymore, let alone need wireless chargers for our bedside tables. Right? So sorry, we've just bought 1,000 units, but we're going to rip up this purchase order.
Ooh.
And so I was like, okay. We're fortunate enough to go into the pandemic with a fair amount of runway. We had about 18 months of cash. And we had another company in New York actually come to us and said, hey, we're looking at your wireless chargers. We were looking at your wireless charge for all of our hot desks. And you showed us this really cool like floor plan that you manage all these wireless chargers on. You can tell which ones are in use, etc. This company said, Fortune 50 company, they said, hey, we're gonna reduce the number of offices we have in Manhattan. We're gonna go from 3 buildings to 1 building. And lockdown happened the end of March, right? March 2020. This was in May 2020. This customer said, hey, we can go from 3 buildings to 1. We think this whole hybrid thing is going to take off. And we're going to reduce the number of desks we have by 49%. Can we use your technology to manage our offices? We don't want your hardware, but can we use the software? And I was like, man, this is 8 years, tons of patents, $17.5 million raised of venture capital. I'd lived and breathed wireless charge. I was on the standards body committee, for goodness sake, for wireless charging. Personally, so this is all I've done the last 8 years. And desk booking software sounds really boring. Like, I'm a deep tech founder. I don't want to do this. But what I was fascinated about was the TAM. There's a ton of desks in offices all over the world. I was fascinated by the fact that we were now a painkiller. We weren't just a vitamin. And our wireless charging tech really was, at the end of the day, as much as we would have loved it to be otherwise, it was a vitamin. It wasn't a painkiller. Like, it was very much a nice to have. And all of a sudden we had the opportunity to provide a must have, need to have, which is easier to sell, as you know. And then thirdly, I was fascinated by all the moving pieces of what would now become hybrid work. Who should be where, when, what happens with this real estate? How do I load balance it? How do I make sure that I can get A, B, and C in town at the right time if everybody's autonomous? How does that work? And so there was enough moving pieces to make the technical side of me fascinated by the challenge. And then the gritty founder side of me loved the TAM.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I'd never heard that metaphor before, but I totally get it. You know, one's a vitamin and one's a painkiller. Like, you know, when it really comes down to it. And when I think about products, I love to simplify it down to like, what did caveman need? You know, they didn't even know what a vitamin was, but like, they definitely know when they're in pain and would do anything to solve it. And this is one, particularly right at that time, where everyone's like looking at their leases or they're looking at their options because they're like, oh my gosh, you know, we're paying $1 million annually in rent and 0 people are there, you know?
Yeah, Facebook paid $170 million to get out of an office in London, for example. Like, it was staggering what was happening.
Yeah.
And so we were like, yeah, there is a painkiller we can sell here. And so, yeah, we made the pivot from a channel sales-led hardware business to a B2B SaaS business that sold direct.
Amazing. And, you know, going to market at that time, like what was traction like? Did you kind of grow word of mouth pretty quickly?
Oh, it was nuts. We'd wake up with HubSpot full of leads every day. And it was, and we hadn't even rebranded yet. But that was something we'd never felt, Ryan. Like, everyone said, oh, you've got product market fit, or you'll feel product market fit. We felt it. It was a pull. I like to say we were selling Figma, as in like we were selling designs of our product on Figma, because it was like we had to show what we were building because we had people knocking on the door and we knew where to click on the Figma to demo to make sure that everything worked. And obviously we made sure that we delivered on time when it came to actual deployment. But the demand was there. People were searching desk booking software. Like, that was the pain. No one was looking for workplace operations. People were looking for their pain. And so, traction was there. We grew really quickly. And we grew with SMB to start with. SMB, a little bit of mid-market, but lots of SMB. And over the last 18 months, we've really gone up market. We're almost 8x year over year in terms of the amount of enterprise logos that we have in the company. And that's where we brought on, I remember we brought on Frederick Carest, co-founder and CEO at Okta. He invested in Kadence a few years ago. And he said, hey, Dan, it's going to take quite a while for us to get to 100 million ARR if we keep doing 5K ACVs. Should we go up market? I'm like, yeah, I think we should, right? And so, we've been aggressively going up market the last 18 months.
Amazing. What does that mean exactly? Like how do you, what changes as far as RevOps to get upstream?
In terms of, particularly around product is what we've noticed that's needed to change the most. We'd won a lot of deals because of the look and feel of the product. It's super elegant, very modern, very design led. And as we've gone up market and been responding to more RFPs, there's been a lot more tactical, hey, we need to build move management, or we need to build what's called scenario planning. So I've got headcount for 3,000 new people in London next year. How do I fit everybody in? Should I renew that lease? So we've found these like more kind of what I call chaos to order, like how do I create order out of chaos features that need to be created as we've gone up market. A little bit like your caveman. They don't need fluff in the enterprise. They need pain killers. And so that's what we've found, I think, has been the biggest move, is how much investment we've had to put in building out the product so it is a unified workplace operations platform rather than just really pretty space booking. That's been a big change. And then, of course, on the go-to-market side, is hiring enterprise AEs that know what they're doing. Like, it's a different thing to take down a Boeing or a Mars or a Willis Tower Watson or whoever, we've had the fortune of working with this last 12, 18 months. It's just a different motion. So learning how to forecast for that, learning length of time, learning what a land strategy looks like, then quickly followed by expand in that account. Lots of learning as we've gone up market for sure.
You bet. Those enterprise AEs, if you go back and hire them now, would you hire somebody for the experience to build out the process, or somebody who just has those relationships already baked in?
I think you got to hire for tenacity to start with, over and above network and relationships. The thing about hiring in the US as well, and forgive me, Ryan, but every AE that you hire in the US is going to tell you they're a rainmaker, regardless of whether they are or not. So I learned the hard way, like many European founders as well, that that's not always the case when you're hiring American AEs. And so I probably trade and discount the network piece more so than most these days. But I learned that the hard way back in 2014, 2015. I look for quote retainment more than anything, Ryan. And can I reference check quote retainment from someone else that's worked with that person previously?
Cool. Amazing. Are you ready for the lightning round?
I know what to expect, but let's go.
Okay, cool. What does California do better than England, and what does England do better than California, specifically that state?
California does optimism 100 times better than the UK. UK still has, as much as I love the place, a tall poppy syndrome where it cuts down anything that raises above surface level, above the pack. And so there is so much more optimism here. There is a culture of giving first as well. I remember raising when we had some angels come in on our seed round when we pivoted the business. And these are founders of unicorn companies saying, if there is room for me in the round, I would love to be in. It's not, you're lucky to have my capital. It's, if there is room for me, I'd love to be in. And so that sense of optimism, if we're talking about business rather than anything else, I would say is the big difference. Business-wise, UK versus US, what I've realized in the UK is that there's a lot more people in what I'd call like the top quartile than I've recognized here in the US, at least working in California, is that there's a lot more people in maybe the top third of like quality of craftsmanship, quality of work, and quite honestly, from what I've experienced, IQ. what I think I've experienced there in the US is the top like decile is insanely high. And so the number of times I've got on with, fortunate enough to be backed by some amazing folks, and I've got on calls with founders and CEOs of public companies here, and a 30-minute call, and I've struggled to keep up, in my early days. And I never experienced that in the UK. I didn't ever experience, and perhaps I wasn't there long enough in work, but I'm experiencing that more regularly here. Just the quality of the top percentile is extraordinary. And I think that's because it attracts a lot of those go-getters to be here. But the general Joe on the street, I think is probably be told off for this, but I think is of a higher quality in business, at least.
In England.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, these things are like, it's like a yin and a yang. You have California has the highest 1%. Boy, but that lone 1% is something else.
Yeah. And that is what I'm saying is like that 1%, like I feel outclassed. A lot of, I'm like, wow, I aspire to be like that. I didn't have as many of those experiences as and maybe that's something unique to the Valley as well, right? But I didn't experience that on the frequency that I do here. But the average person, I do think is, again, this is just a generalization, I've noticed to be slightly better. In terms of if you're not talking about business, I really miss banter. In the UK, I miss the dry sense of humor.
Yeah.
California does not do that well. Californians take themselves far too seriously. I love them to bits, but they take themselves very seriously.
Yeah, very sensitive out west. And I don't think that anybody will argue with you because that top 1%, they're all Indians, so we get it. No, I'm teasing, of course. Nice. Why is founder-led marketing important to you? Why are you out here doing this?
Yeah, building in public has been huge for us. Like we go to events now and people are asking where I am, or more importantly, they're asking where my colleague Dave Cairns is, who is a big influencer in our space. And so we've built quite a following on LinkedIn in particular. The LinkedIn algorithm loves talking about the future of work and return to office, as you might imagine. So we've been able to really kind of newsjack a lot of headlines and play to our favor. Building public matters. I think people want to believe in the brand. They want to see that the product's staying new and getting better. And I think the founder can encapsulate that. And it's working. I mean, some of the enterprise logos that we've signed this year have come from, we saw you on LinkedIn, or you cold reached out on LinkedIn. One of the biggest neobanks in Europe signed with us. It was our biggest deal ever at the time. Might still even be our biggest deal now. In end of Q2, cold outbound from a rep still ramping, closed within 9 weeks, and we replaced a competitor that had been there for 10 years. And I don't think that would have happened without as much building in public reps that we'd gotten in.
Amazing. That's so you're seeing it as like being a differentiator between competitors for sure, where they're like, I'm a Dan guy.
It's massive. How many of our private equity backed competitor CEOs are building in public? There aren't that many.
Is there, that's the bull case. Is there a bear case to building in public? Do you feel exposed or vulnerable?
No, I mean, I've had trolls and stuff in the past, which is not friendly. But it's not been about building so much, product wise. No, I think you've got to be obviously careful about what you're doing art of war wise, like how much you're sharing that competitors might see, how much you're not sharing, what are you secretly building that you're going to do a big got ya moment on later as you kind of building on a new kind of 0 to 1 product. So I think there is an art to what you share and what you don't share. But now I think most people for the most part, want founders to succeed. It's there's a lot of people discouraging people to be founders right now because of how hard it is, and it's incredibly hard. I think Elon calls it chewing glass and staring into the abyss, right? Is what it feels like to be a founder a lot of the time. But I I think people love, I follow a guy called Howard who's building a wonderful company called Rome. And he's very public about how he's building the company, what he's sharing. And it makes me want him to win even more.
Yeah, totally. Cool. This audience loves business ideas. Then they like the juice, much like Greg Eisenberg. What is the best idea you could have come up with to capitalize on the massive amount of commercial real estate that's coming up for grabs in the next couple of years?
Hopefully this is where your editors will pause or cut. What's the best idea I've had to capitalize on the amount of commercial real estate that's coming up for grabs?
27th floor flea market. How about that?
Yeah. So Charlie Munger actually looked at this in quite a lot of detail. And he looked at, can you track, and this has come up in San Francisco a lot, which has had the slowest return to office of any major city in the US. Can you turn corporate real estate offices into anything else? And there's been a whole lot about, can you residentialify and make them residential spaces? The truth is you probably can't. They're just not set up to. If you think about a floor plate of a high rise, it's glass all the way around the outside, but you're going to have very long and narrow rooms in your apartment if that's going to be the case, right? And so Charlie Munger said, hey, is there anybody that would be okay with that? And he said students. So like, can you actually pack a whole lot more student accommodation into downtown cities? And I don't think that's a bad thing. Some of the Nick Bloom at Stanford, professor there, calls it the donut effect, where cities like San Jose that I'm very close to, they are like ghost towns now. Even though Zoom and Adobe and many others are headquartered there is no mix of residential versus offices. It's pretty much all offices. And so there's no incentive for people to come in, stay late, watch a game, go to a bar, etc., because it's completely not residential. And so the biggest opportunity to get to your question, Ryan, is actually, can mayors of cities reimagine downtown? Because business parks and those donut cities are going to be ghost towns very quickly.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's already happened it's happening everywhere, right? But it was interesting that a couple of big high rises in Denver were sold for like $3 million when like 8 years prior were sold for like 120 million. You know, shout out to another buddy of mine who in Denver, where we have a kind of a famous cash register building on our skyline, and he took over a lease on the highest floor before it goes round. So, you know, gorgeous. I mean, like views of the Rocky Mountains, views of the plains, unbelievable. And he basically picked up like the last 3 years of like a 10-year lease for $1. And all of the office furniture too. Just somebody was like bailing and had to sign it off the liability. So, you know, there's deals and opportunities out there all over the place, you know, and it'll be interesting to see because it rarely has such like prime, cool real estate, you know, been able to be this affordable, like orders of magnitude discounted. So it'll be very interesting to see. You sell Kadence for $1 billion. What do you do the next day?
Next day, I'm probably recovering from the night before a little bit. I guess to start with, the next day I'm probably saying a lot of thank yous. I'm probably saying a lot of thank yous to people that believed in our angel rounds, people, earliest employees, wanting to make sure they're fully looked after, the investors that backed us earliest rounds. I think I'm saying a lot of thank yous. I'm probably having a massage to chill out a little bit as well. But yeah, that's probably what I'm doing. If I'm still in the business, I'm continuing to crack on. If not, I'm probably, I already would know what I'm going to be doing next. I would have had that figured out in terms of what startup I want to go and do next. I love backing founders as well, like being here and being around the block a little bit now. 36, but started building companies very early. I've been fortunate enough to be mentored by, you know, founder of TechCrunch, for example, amazing guy called Keith Tier. And so I got a pretty good idea what investment decks work, what investment decks don't work. And so I think I'd probably be helping founders and building something again myself.
What should we know about wireless charging right now? What's going on? What's cool and new?
So no, don't ask me. I haven't looked for a while. And I'm excited about wireless charging for electric vehicles. Like, I think that's really cool. I think we're going to need it for autonomous fleets. I was in a Waymo yesterday. I was actually doing an interview in a Waymo yesterday, and that thing still needs to be plugged in at night. And there's someone that is doing that. And so wireless chargers, I think, are going to be a key to autonomy. I don't think they're going to be in our roads or anything like that, but there's enough parking lots. There's enough driveways around there. So yeah, I think wireless charging for autonomy enablement's really, really cool.
Cool. Last question here. Having an English accent seems like it would be performance enhancing in America. Do you have any fun stories around that?
People say that a lot. The honest truth is I don't know any different, right? I've definitely made the mistakes though, Ryan. Like, I remember being in board meetings and I'm like, okay, let's put the next date in the diary right now. And people are like, what are you putting a date in your diary for? You mean like calendar? Or are you getting out your secret notebook that teenage girls might have about board meetings? So yeah, I've made a few kind of faux pas like that is probably the most thing. But if you say it with confidence and in a British accent, then it can pretty much work. It's kind of what I did the other day. I said, I was on a call, I used the word depository rather than repository, but no one blinked. I was like, I got away with that one. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully it serves my two sons well later in life being out here.
I love it. Were there any euphemisms from America that made you pause? Are you going to remember?
Fanny pack's one is odd. There's been a few, buoy rather than, so we would call a buoy a boy. We find that one strange. When we got here, someone said, have we acclimated yet? We're like, have you just mispronounced acclimatize? So there's been a few things that, and we have quite a lot of fun with it. Like I'm definitely on the, hey, at Kadence, we use American English. I'm definitely on like the, let's be on the side with the most people, as much as, you're licensing our language. But no, I love it here and I've got a lot to thank this country for.
Amazing. Want to give a shout out. It's cadence.co. That's Kadence with a K. Also want to give a shout out to stopthetraffic.org, which is 2 F's and a K at the end, .org. They are working preventing human trafficking before it happens. I know that this is an organization near and dear to your heart. I was actually just educated a lot about this by Tim Tebow of all people on a podcast.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He's doing a lot of this work too, and it's pretty staggering and scary, like how widespread human trafficking and just slavery is in the world right now. Something I was blind to, so I want to give them a shout out. Anything to add for Stop the Traffic?
It's bonkers. No, it's been, my wife alerted me to it about 15 years ago, and we've been supporting as a family some of the anti-trafficking stuff for the last little while. And yeah, they're a Kadence customer now, which we're delighted about too.
Incredible. And that's again, cadence.co. You mentioned LinkedIn. Is that the best place for people to connect with you online?
Yeah. Or x.com/Dan Bladen.
Amazing. Dan, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for what you do, Ryan.
All right. Coffee is great, but coffee won't prep your meetings for you. It'll just keep you awake while you panic, hastily scrolling through LinkedIn at 6:59 a.m. Ambient, however, will prep your meetings. Each morning, you get a founder-tuned briefing sourced overnight from your calendar, your meeting history, and the web. It's like walking into every call with a cheat sheet that you didn't have to write. No more scrambling, no more guessing, just context, confidence, and focus. And if you're raising money, Ambient investor dossiers are an absolute must-have. You'll know the investor's portfolio, their interests, and their latest moves before you even step into the room. You'll even get a heads up on red flags. Think of it as the caffeine upgrade that your calendar actually needs. Prep while you sleep, perform while you're awake. Sign up for free at ambient.us. Go check it out at ambient.us. That's ambient.us. This episode is brought to you by MoBurst, the AI-first growth engine trusted by iconic startups like Calm, Robinhood, Reddit, Uber, and Google. MoBurst is a digital full-service mobile-first marketing agency that helps companies to scale and become category leaders. Whether you're finding product-market fit or ready to accelerate growth, MoBurst delivers creative, data-driven solutions that help with scale and efficiency and impact. At MoBurst, we're not just guessing what works, we're predicting it. As an AI-first agency, MoBurst uses cutting-edge tools to analyze user behavior, adapt creative in real time, and uncover hidden growth opportunities. The result, marketing that's faster, smarter, and built to convert. From early-stage startups to global brands, we've helped hundreds of companies overcome complex challenges, unlock new audiences, and optimize every metric that matters. At MoBurst, we believe that creative thinking, advanced technology, and data are the core drivers of success at scale. If you're serious about scaling your business with precision and purpose, it's time to talk to MoBurst. Visit moburst.com and let's build something category-defining together. Hey founders, let me ask you this. Are you building with AI or getting left behind by it? If you're serious about scaling smarter, faster, and bolder, you need to check out aiforfounders.co. It's your go-to resource for cutting through the noise and actually using AI to grow your startup. Each week, AI for Founders drops a sharp, no-fluff newsletter, dives deep with expert guests on the podcast, and hosts monthly workshops where you can get your hands dirty with the real tools and strategies. Whether you're pre-seed or Series B and beyond, launching something new or just staying sharp, AI for Founders gives you the edge you need to win in 2025 and beyond. Hit aiforfounders.co to subscribe to the newsletter, tune into the podcast, and grab your spot in the next workshop. And it's all free. Build smarter, move faster, think bolder with AI for Founders. Now back to the show.